My mother was a domestic, and she did housekeeping in this neighborhood when I was younger. So it was a lot of pride for me to be the first homeowner and bring her to a home in an area that she used to be a housekeeper for.
Walking through her old backyard in Detroit, Michigan, Edith Lee Payne has fond family memories.
We had my 50th birthday party was back here, and there were a good 50 or so people, just tables lined up and dances with my son, and it was just amazing.
But also heartbreaking ones.
I'd rather look at the trees.
Especially when she thinks of the fire that uprooted her life 20 years ago.
It's overwhelming, it's disappointing, and it's frightening.
The fire sparked in July 2003. A state fire marshal's report shows it was from a short circuit. Lee Payne says the fire started because trees came down on power lines and claims her utility company, DTE Energy, failed to remove dead trees near her home.
So during a line clearance cycle in 2001, they left 6 dead trees. Because they left the dead trees back there, one of the 6 fell onto their service drop that services this house and caused a power surge, started an electrical fire.
But DTE's website shows service drops, those lines going to a home, are a customer's responsibility. While insurance paid for some of the damage, Lee Payne had to dip into life savings to pay for the rest. She's taken DTE to court, where a judge said the fire was unfortunate, but that the power company didn't do anything wrong, and that the responsibility to clear lines that run to the home is the customer's. Then in 2022, almost unbelievably, she had another fire. Another one, she says, was caused by a power issue, this time a surge. Though the energy company says it has no evidence of an equipment issue on their end.
I need your help. I don't want any other excuses. Like I said, I have no more houses to lose. I need to meet with you. This needs to be rectified.
Payne expressed her concerns multiple times to DTE Energy and the Michigan Public Service Commission before and after the fires.
Power surges can occur and house fires, and people die.
Are you afraid somebody's going to get killed if this doesn't change?
People have already been killed. And in spite of what this company owes me, my family could have been killed. The redeeming factor was the fact that it happened during the day while we were up and awake. But it could have happened at night while we were asleep.
The commission denied Lee Payne's claims, but her story highlights the confusion when it comes to who's responsible for trees near power lines. Dan Scripps is the chair of the Michigan Public Service Commission. They regulate Lee Payne's utility company and several others in the state.
And there are parts of our system, particularly in the Detroit area. It's an old system. There are challenges with some of the backlots or alleyway systems where the city a long time ago sort of gave up those alleys to the residents, and as a result, you've seen not a lot of vegetation management. It's really difficult to get back there, but the reality is, that's the system that we have, and we need to live in the reality that we're facing.
DTE says the reality in Detroit is trees are responsible for half the time people spend without power, and falling trees can be dangerous.
From a safety perspective, one of the challenges is that those lines stay live when they come down, and we've seen really tragic consequences with fatalities of people who have touched down lines or touched a fence that is connected to a down line, and so there is very much a safety piece of this as well.
In 2003, a blackout crippled the northeastern part of the United States and parts of Canada, leaving millions of people in the dark. Nearly 100 people died. The overall economic cost was estimated between $4 to $6 billion. A federal investigative report determined that part of the reason for the outage had to do with overgrown trees. Adding, had all the trees which contributed to the outage been adequately pruned or removed prior to the event, the blackout would likely have not occurred. Tree and power line conflicts have also caused significant wildfires in both the U.S. and Canada. A state-contracted investigation into the deadly California wildfires in 2017 and 2018 showed they were caused by vegetation issues that the state's major utility company should have known about and addressed if it was following state law or industry standards.
Trees contacting utility lines are the #1 cause of outages throughout the country.
Professor Lawrence Kahn developed the Tulane Utility Vegetation Management Initiative, a project training the next generation of attorneys at Tulane University in New Orleans.
Even if you're taking very good care of your trees, who's to say your neighbor is taking equally good care of your neighbor's trees? And the answer is, you can't have that kind of confidence without knowing your neighbors very well. Beyond that, if a tree comes into contact with a utility line, there are some significant problems that can occur.
Our national investigative team analyzed federal data on major power outages and found that on average, customers are left in the dark from 2 to 4 hours at least once each year. Mother Nature playing a major part, with federal records from major power disruptions from the last several years showing that roughly 85% of significant outages each year were caused by severe weather or natural disaster. Now, the data doesn't specify whether vegetation is involved, but Kahn says it's more than likely in those weather-related events.
If you've ever been in a situation where you don't have power at home, chances are it's because a tree came into contact with a power line.
And in a survey done by the University of Wisconsin-Stevens, utility companies themselves reported that on average, nearly a quarter of all outages in 2019 were attributable to vegetation. And vegetation management has been noted by several federal officials as a strategy to improve grid resiliency.
Do you think there should be more accountability when it comes to utility companies ensuring that they're watching vegetation management?
They're already accountable. The question is, who's enforcing that?
Enforcement isn't uniform across the country. Major utilities are subject to federal standards, requiring things like annual inspections and documented plans to ensure lines are kept clear. Otherwise, utilities are regulated at the state level, meaning requirements can vary state by state. For example, both Oklahoma and Connecticut require that utilities submit annual maintenance plans, but Oklahoma law specifies vegetation management must be done on a 4-year cycle, where Connecticut leaves it up to each company.
Is it good to have some form of independence, or should there be more uniformity nationwide?
I think it's up to us as state regulators to do the job that we've been asked to do, to make sure that we're doing it in a way that delivers results for the customers. So Michigan has a different system than Arizona, for example, where there are much fewer trees. They have less of a problem with ice than we do. We also get fewer hurricanes than Texas does or Florida does. And so some of those regional differences ultimately lead to different approaches. I think the reality of the jurisdictional divides sort of reflects that. But I do believe that we have a lot to learn from each other.
For Lee Payne, she won't stop fighting until she sees power companies take more responsibility for clearing all trees from all power lines and stop people from feeling powerless.
I want to see this come to fruition because, most importantly, people's lives are at stake. I don't want to see anybody else die. I don't want to see anybody else lose any property as I have and other people have.